In the waning years of the 19th century, mankind stood on the precipice of its greatest achievement yet, powered flight. For millennia, humans had gazed skyward at soaring birds with envy and wonder, dreaming of joining them in the endless blue expanse above. Many had tried and failed, from Leonardo da Vinci's ingenious sketches to the countless inventors who plummeted from towers and hills in desperate attempts to master the air. But it would take two unassuming brothers from Dayton, Ohio, to finally unlock the secret of flight. The story begins in a modest home in Dayton, where Milton Wright, a bishop in the Church of the United Brethren in Christ, returned from one of his frequent work travels with a simple toy that would change history. It was a small wooden helicopter powered by a rubber band. When wound up and released, it would flutter up to the ceiling. As Milton revealed this magical contraption to his young sons Wilbur and Orville, he could not have known he was planting the seeds of aviation history. The Wright household was far from wealthy, but it was rich in intellectual curiosity. Despite lacking modern amenities like running water, electricity, they cooked on a wood stove and lit their home with natural gas. The family maintained an uncommonly large library. The shelves heaved with diverse works: Dickens, Washington Irving, Hawthorne, Mark Twain, Sir Walter Scott's complete works, Virgil's poems, Plutarch's Lives, Milton's Paradise Lost, Boswell's Life of Johnson and Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. Though Milton was a clergyman, religion rarely featured in family correspondence or home decor, save for a single print of Saint Dorothy, the patron saint of music. He even gave his sons Robert Ingersoll's The Great Agnostic, reflecting an unexpected openness to questioning faith. Wilbur, born in 1867, and Orville, born in 1871, were inseparable despite their 4-year age gap. Their father called them as inseparable as twins and indispensable to one another. This bond would persist throughout their lives. They would work together, live together, and even maintain a joint bank account in their later years. While both possessed remarkable intelligence, they brought different strengths to their partnership. Wilbur was the more serious intellectual, possessing what many considered genius-level intelligence. He could become so lost in thought that classmates found him a little strange, often leaving the house only to return minutes later for a forgotten hat. Yet Wilbur defied the stereotype of the awkward intellectual. Tall and strong-jawed, he excelled in athletics, particularly football, skating, and gymnastics. His combination of physical and mental prowess had him on track for Yale University, until tragedy struck in 1885. At age 18, during a hockey game on a frozen lake, a neighborhood thug, who would later become notorious as a murderer, viciously struck Wilbur in the face with a hockey stick, knocking out his front teeth. The assault left him with what modern medicine would recognize as a severe concussion, sending him into a years-long depression. During Wilbur's dark period, another shadow fell over the Wright household. Their mother contracted tuberculosis. The family was exceptionally close-knit, and Wilbur devoted himself entirely to caring for her. Their mother, Susan, notably, was the source of the brothers' engineering prowess. The daughter of a mechanic and engineer, she possessed an innate talent for fixing things and solving mechanical problems. This technical aptitude would prove crucial to her son's future achievements. When Susan Wright passed away in 1889, the loss devastated the family. Yet paradoxically, her death seemed to free Wilbur from his self-imposed isolation. Having focused solely on caring for his bedridden mother, he could now begin to look toward his own future. Meanwhile, their younger sister Catherine, only 14 at the time, stepped into the maternal role. Catherine became the emotional cornerstone of the household. More socially adept than her brothers, she would later prove instrumental in their success, serving as their bridge to the outside world. The first glimpse of Orville's entrepreneurial spirit emerged early. At age 10, he began crafting and selling kites to his peers. While still in high school, his enthusiasm turned to newspapers. He constructed a homemade printing press from scrap metal and an unused tombstone. Wilbur, naturally, joined his brother's printing venture, marking their first business collaboration. The 1890s brought a transformative opportunity: the bicycle craze. What began with impractical novelties like the penny farthing, those distinctive cycles with a massive front wheel and tiny rear wheel, evolved into the safety bicycle, with its equally sized wheels and lower seat. This innovation sparked a nationwide mania, and Orville, ever the enthusiast, was immediately captivated. Their timing was perfect. In 1893, the brothers opened the Wright Cycle Exchange, a modest bicycle repair and sales shop within walking distance of their home. Their approach to the bicycle business revealed the qualities that would later enable them to solve flight and continuous innovation. Their first advertisement for their own bicycle, the Van Cleve, embodied their straightforward, quality-focused philosophy. It will have large tubing, high frame tool, steel bearings, needle wire, spokes, narrow tread, and every feature of an up-to-date bicycle. Its weight will be about 20 pounds. The bicycle industry experienced what would later be recognized as a classic hype cycle, invention, inflated expectations, crash, and eventual stability. When the inevitable market correction came, many competitors folded, but the Wrights' commitment to excellence saw them through. In fact, the downturn proved beneficial, eliminating less serious competitors and allowing the brothers to expand their operation. By 1895, they had moved to larger quarters and begun manufacturing their own bicycles. It was in 1896 that their destiny with flight began to take shape. News reached them of Otto Lilienthal, a German engineer and gliding pioneer who had achieved remarkable success in controlled gliding. Like the Wright brothers would later do, Lilienthal had studied birds with his brother in his youth. He approached flight with scientific rigor, declaring, "It is our duty not to rest until we have attained a perfect scientific conception of the problem of flight." Lilienthal had achieved glides of up to 900 feet from hills 30 to 50 feet high. But on August 9th, 1896, after 4 successful glides, he attempted a 5th, despite warnings. His last words, "Sacrifices must be made," proved tragically prophetic. When his glider pitched downward, he could not recover from the 50-foot freefall. The crash broke his back and claimed his life. This news reached the Wright household at a pivotal moment. Orville was bedridden with typhoid fever, running a delirious temperature of 105 degrees. As Wilbur read him the newspaper account of Lilienthal's death, their childhood fascination with flight reignited with new intensity. They began voraciously studying other aviation pioneers, including French experimenter L.P. Mouillard, who warned prophetically that the pursuit of flight could become all-consuming. When once the idea has invaded the brain, it possesses it exclusively. On May 30th, 1899, Wilbur took their first concrete step toward conquering flight. He penned a carefully worded letter to the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, demonstrating both their serious intent and awareness of how aviation enthusiasts were often perceived. "I have been interested in the problem of mechanical and human flight ever since. As a boy, I constructed a number of bats of various sizes after the style of Cayley's and Penau's machines. My observations since have only convinced me more firmly that human flight is possible and practicable. I am an enthusiast, but not a crank, in the sense that I have some pet theories as to the proper construction of a flying machine." This distinction was crucial. Flight in the 1890s occupied a peculiar space in the public imagination, similar to cold fusion in later decades. While legitimate scientists pursued it, the field also attracted numerous dreamers and frauds. Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, and Hiram Maxim, the inventor of the machine gun, had all attempted to crack the puzzle of powered flight. Maxim had invested $100,000 of his own money, an enormous sum at the time, in a steam-powered flying machine that crashed on its maiden attempt. The French government had spent similar amounts on their own failed steam-powered aircraft. The head of the Smithsonian himself, Samuel Langley, was deeply invested in the problem of flight. Perhaps recognizing a kindred spirit in Wilbur's methodical approach, Langley responded generously, providing the brothers with valuable technical information and documents about previous attempts at flight. The brothers began their systematic study of flight by observing nature's most successful aviators, birds. While others had done the same, including Leonardo da Vinci centuries earlier, Wilbur's keen eye noticed something revolutionary. Rather than shifting their weight or turning their bodies to change direction, birds achieved turns by subtly adjusting the shape of their wings. They would shorten one wing when they wanted to roll in that direction. This observation led to their breakthrough concept of wing warping, the idea that the very edges of an aircraft's wings could be twisted to control the craft's roll. To test this theory, they built a biplane kite with a modest 5-foot wingspan, constructed from bamboo and paper. Using control lines, they could twist the wings, and to their delight, the concept worked exactly as theorized. When they twisted one side up, it exposed more surface area to the wind, generating additional lift on that side while the opposite wing dipped, creating a controlled roll-in motion. But their most crucial insight came from watching how birds constantly made tiny adjustments to maintain stability, even when simply gliding on air currents. This led them to a revolutionary conclusion. The primary challenge of flight wasn't generating lift or propulsion. Lilienthal had already demonstrated that gliding was possible. The key challenge was control. While other inventors focused obsessively on more powerful engines or larger wings, the Wright brothers realized they needed to master the subtle art of controlling a flying machine. This insight set them apart from their contemporaries. They calculated that in Lilienthal's 5 years of experiments, he had accumulated only 5 hours of actual flying time. The brothers determined they would need far more practice to master the complex mechanics of flight control. To find an ideal testing ground, Wilbur wrote to the United States Weather Bureau, requesting data on wind velocities across the country. Among the records from over 100 weather stations, an obscure village called Kitty Hawk on North Carolina's Outer Banks caught their attention. It offered consistent strong winds and, crucially, soft sand for landing. While remote and difficult to access, its isolation would prove beneficial for their secretive experiments. The brothers constructed an 18-foot wingspan glider at a cost of $15, designed to be disassembled for transport and reassembled at their testing site. The journey to Kitty Hawk in 1900 proved challenging. They had to take a precarious boat ride in a skiff so decrepit they had to continuously bail water to stay afloat. The brothers' arrival in Kitty Hawk marked the beginning of their methodical approach to conquering flight. While the local fishermen viewed them skeptically as a pair of poor nuts, they would soon witness history in the making. One resident, John T. Daniels, later recalled watching their peculiar behavior. They'd stand on the beach for hours at a time, just looking at the gulls flying, soaring, dipping. They would watch them and imitate the movements of their wings with their arms and hands. We thought they were crazy, but we just had to admire the way they could move their arms this way and that, and bend their elbows and wrist bones up and down just like the birds. Their first summer at Kitty Hawk in 1900 was devoted to testing what was essentially a manned kite. Rather than attempting dramatic flights, they began by letting the wind lift them just 20 feet off the ground, focusing on mastering control of their machine. This cautious approach reflected Wilbur's philosophy. The man who wishes to keep at the problem long enough to really learn anything positive must not take dangerous risks. Carelessness and overconfidence are usually more dangerous than deliberately accepted risks. In their first week alone, they spent 2 to 4 hours in the air on each of 3 different days. This meant they had already accumulated more flying time than Lilienthal had in his entire 5-year career. Between flights, they constantly tinkered with their machine, making adjustments based on their observations and experiences. Life in Kitty Hawk was Spartan. After initially staying in a fisherman's spare room, they moved to a tent. Their diet consisted mainly of eggs, tomatoes, and hot biscuits from the locals. Yet Orville would later describe this period as the happiest time they had ever known. However, their return to Kitty Hawk in 1901 brought disaster. Having spent the winter studying other aviators' data about wing angles and design, they modified their glider according to these calculations. To their dismay, the new design performed far worse than their original. Through careful observation and testing, they realized that all the existing data about wind resistance coefficients and wing curvature was fundamentally flawed. This wasn't entirely surprising. Given their extensive time in the air, they had already accumulated more practical experience than all other aviators combined. The realization plunged Wilbur into temporary despair. He famously declared that man wouldn't fly for 1,000 years, though Orville later suggested he had said 50 years. By the time they reached Dayton, they were more excited about flight than ever, armed with new ideas for advancing their research. This setback led to one of their most important innovations. Above their bicycle shop, they constructed one of the world's first wind tunnels, a box 16 inches square and 6 feet long, with a fan at one end. This allowed them to rapidly test different wing designs in miniature, rather than building full-size gliders for each experiment. They tested 38 different wing surfaces, with the fan generating winds up to 27 miles per hour. Often working past midnight, they meticulously gathered the accurate data they needed to perfect their design. Their wind tunnel experiments established precise measurements that became fundamental to aircraft design. The data they gathered about wing shapes and angles remained valuable, even as aircraft evolved from wood and fabric to metal construction. Their understanding of aspect ratio, the relationship between a wing's length and width, influenced aircraft design for decades to come. Rear Admiral George Melville, the chief engineer of the United States Navy, captured the growing skepticism in an article, writing that a calm survey of certain natural phenomena leads the engineer to pronounce all confident prophecies for future success as wholly unwarranted, if not absurd. Where even to this hour, are we to look for the germ of the successful flying machine? During this period, Octave Chanute, a respected aviation pioneer who had befriended the brothers, recognized their potential and offered to connect them with Andrew Carnegie for substantial funding. The brothers declined, preferring the independence that came with self-funding. Their financial constraints forced them to approach problems creatively. Their wind tunnel experiments led to a vastly improved glider in 1902. The new machine boasted an impressive 32-foot by 5-foot wingspan, significantly larger than their previous attempts. When they returned to Kitty Hawk that year, the results were immediately apparent. Their calculations had been spot on. A breakthrough came on October the 2nd. Born from a sleepless night, Orville, overstimulated by coffee, lay awake, pondering their control problems. As dawn approached, he had an epiphany. What if they made the rear rudder movable? Until then, they had focused on wing manipulation, but a controllable rudder would add another dimension of control. The next morning, with a hint of mischief, Orville told one of their companions to watch what would happen when he presented the idea to Wilbur, expecting one of their characteristic debates. Wilbur, known for his Steve Jobs-like tendency to challenge ideas to test their merit, surprised everyone by quietly considering the suggestion for a few moments before declaring it a really good idea. The movable rudder proved to be the final piece of their control puzzle. Soon, they were making controlled glides of more than 600 feet, demonstrating unprecedented mastery over their machine. As David McCullough wrote, they could soar, they could float, they could dive and rise, circle and glide, and land, all with assurance. With the problems of lift and control solved, only one challenge remained: power. The brothers approached the task methodically, first reaching out to existing engine manufacturers. They needed an engine that could provide decent power while remaining light enough for flight, a combination that didn't exist in the automotive engines of the day. This is where Charlie Taylor, their bicycle shop mechanic, emerged as an unsung hero of aviation history. Despite having no experience building engines beyond helping a friend repair one, Taylor took on the challenge of creating an engine that would meet the brothers' exacting specifications. Using the same metal lathe and drill press they used for manufacturing bicycles, Taylor worked independently for 6 weeks to create something remarkable. An engine that delivered 20 horsepower while weighing only 150 pounds, far exceeding the brothers' requirements of 8 horsepower and maximum 200 pounds. Taylor was a fascinating character, a man who smoked 25 cigars daily and engaged in constant good-natured sparring with Catherine Wright. Though his contribution to aviation history has been largely forgotten, he remained modest about his role, later saying, "They appreciated that I had a part in giving the airplane to the world, though nobody made any fuss about it, and I didn't either." With the engine challenge solved, the brothers still needed to tackle one final hurdle: the propellers. Initially, assuming they could adapt marine propeller designs, they quickly discovered that air propellers required an entirely different approach. The problem consumed them, leading to intense debates that echoed through their home. During one particularly heated discussion about propeller design, their sister Catherine, nearly hysterical, cried out, "If you don't stop arguing, I'll leave home." The next morning revealed the brothers' unique dynamic. Charlie Taylor arrived to open the shop at 7 a.m. to find Orville declaring that Wilbur had been right, only to have Wilbur arrive moments later suggesting that perhaps Orv was right. Through this process of passionate debate and mutual respect, they developed an effective propeller design. By March 23, 1903, they felt confident enough to apply for a patent on their flying machine. The timing proved fortunate. Samuel Langley had secured $70,000 in funding, 70 times what the Wrights had spent on their entire project. On October 7th, 1903, before a crowd of hundreds, Langley attempted to launch his aircraft over the Potomac River. The machine immediately plunged into the water. A second attempt on December 8th fared even worse, turning Langley into a public laughingstock. The Wright brothers' response to Langley's failure revealed their character. While others mocked him, Wilbur defended Langley, saying the press's treatment was shameful and that his work deserved neither abuse nor apology. As winter approached in 1903, the brothers returned to Kitty Hawk for what they hoped would be their definitive tests. On December 11th, Wilbur made the first attempt at powered flight. The engine roared to life, and he climbed aboard. The machine lifted briefly into the cold winter air before Wilbur, unused to the additional weight of the engine, pulled too hard on the rudder. The Flyer pitched upward, lost lift, and plunged into the sand just 100 feet from its starting point. Far from discouraged, the brothers were elated. The machine had worked exactly as designed. The only flaw had been in piloting, something they knew they could correct. After 2 days of repairs, they were ready to try again, but weather conditions forced them to wait until December 16th. That morning dawned cold and windy, with gusts up to 27 miles per hour buffeting the dunes of Kill Devil Hills. The brothers waited patiently for conditions to improve, and by late morning, they deemed it time to try. Orville would pilot this attempt. The Flyer used a track for launching, and as it began moving, Wilbur ran alongside, his left hand resting on the right wing. The headwind was so strong that Wilbur had no trouble keeping pace. Then, at 10:35 a.m., history was made. The Flyer lifted off the ground, and for 12 seconds, Orville Wright flew. The distance was modest, just 120 feet, but it marked the first time a human had achieved controlled, powered flight in a heavier-than-air machine. When later asked if he had been frightened during this first flight, Orville smiled and replied simply, "There wasn't time." That same morning, they achieved 3 more flights. The second covered 175 feet, the third reached 200 feet, and then, just before noon, Wilbur took the controls for the 4th attempt. This flight proved truly remarkable. Wilbur maintained perfect control for 59 seconds, covering 852 feet. This 1-minute-long flight decisively proved that powered controlled flight was possible. Bishop Wright received their telegram announcing the triumph. Success. 4 flights. Thursday morning, all against 21-mile winds, started from level with engine power alone. Average speed through air, 31 miles per hour. Longest, 59 seconds. Inform press home for Christmas Orville Wright. This carefully worded message documented history's first sustained, controlled, powered flights by a heavier-than-air machine that took off under its own power and landed at a point as high as its starting position. Surprisingly, the press showed little interest. Frank Tennyson of the Associated Press and the Dayton Daily Journal dismissed the achievement, saying, 59 seconds, eh? If it had been 59 minutes, then it might have been a news item. The Wright brothers simply returned to their bicycle shop, sole keepers of aviation's greatest secret. Throughout 1904, they quietly constructed a new, improved Flyer. This version was heavier and sturdier than the 1903 model, with a more powerful and efficient engine. Deciding they no longer needed North Carolina's strong winds, they found a field outside Dayton, belonging to farmer Torrance Huffman. Though Huffman allowed them to rent his field, he considered them foolish dreamers, telling a neighboring farmer that the boys were fools. Initially, their decision to leave Kitty Hawk seemed misguided. Without the coastal winds, they struggled to achieve takeoff on the shorter field. It wasn't until August 13th that Wilbur finally managed a sustained flight of more than 1,000 feet. To solve the takeoff problem, they developed a simple catapult system that launched them from a ramp. With this innovation, they achieved flights of over half a mile, and on September 14th, 1904, Wilbur accomplished the first half-circle turn in aviation history. These remarkable achievements were happening right in Dayton, yet they went largely unnoticed. Amos Root, a successful entrepreneur who had made his fortune in beekeeping equipment, became fascinated with the brothers' work. After persistent correspondence, at one point writing, "Excuse me, friends, but I am so anxious to see that airship, I can hardly sleep at night," Root finally received permission to observe their flights. His enthusiasm proved justified when he witnessed the first complete circle ever flown in an aircraft. Root's subsequent article captured both the technical achievement and its profound implications. "God, in his great mercy, has permitted me to be at least somewhat instrumental in ushering in and introducing to the great wide world an invention that may outrank electric cars and automobiles and may fairly take a place beside the telephone and wireless telegraphy." When he offered the article, free of charge, to Scientific American, they declined. A year later, that same magazine published an article titled "The Wright Aeroplane and Its Fabled Performances," dismissing the brothers as frauds. The first serious interest came from across the Atlantic. The British military expressed interest, but the patriotic Wright brothers initially declined, hoping to serve their own country first. They wrote again to the US War Department, mentioning the British interest, but were rebuffed once more. Only then did they reluctantly engage with foreign governments, adopting the practical view that, as Wilbur wrote, "It has for years been our business practice to sell to those who wish to buy, instead of trying to force goods upon those who do not want them." By 1905, they had developed a truly practical aircraft. Unlike the prone position required in earlier models, pilots could now sit upright. The machine was sturdier, more powerful, and capable of flights exceeding 15 miles. For the first time, they began writing about the pure joy of flying. The sensation is so keenly delightful as to be almost beyond description. Nobody who has not experienced it for himself can realize it. In 1906, serious negotiations began with the French government. The proposed deal would pay the brothers 1 million francs, approximately $200,000, for a single flyer, contingent on successful demonstrations in France and meeting specific requirements for altitude, distance, and speed. These negotiations finally caught the attention of the American press, with several pioneering aviators making headlines with their own experiments. The Paris Herald encapsulated the prevailing attitude in an article titled "Flyers or Liars," stating bluntly, "The Wrights have flown or they have not flown. They possess a machine or they do not possess one. They are, in fact, either flyers or liars. It is difficult to fly. It is easy to say, we have flown." The word bluffers became commonly associated with the brothers in French media. In May 1907, Wilbur traveled to Europe, accompanied by Hart Berg, a Jewish-American businessman whose firm had contracted to sell Wright Flyers in Europe. This partnership proved crucial, as Berg's expertise in navigating the complex politics of international sales complemented Wilbur's straightforward, honest approach. When someone suggested paying a bribe to expedite negotiations with the French government, Wilbur refused outright to even consider it. The French insisted on a demonstration before finalizing any agreement. Meanwhile, French aviators Alberto Santos Dumont and Henri Farman were conducting public flights, with Farman even achieving circular flight. Though their achievements fell far short of the Wright brothers' capabilities, the lack of public demonstrations from the Wrights fed skepticism about their claims. By 1908, the brothers had secured agreements with both the French government and finally the US military. That summer, Wilbur returned to France, accepting an offer from industrialist Léon Bollée to use his factory and field in Le Mans. Upon arriving, he discovered the French customs officials had severely damaged his shipped aircraft during inspection. It needed to be completely rebuilt, leaving Wilbur to reconstruct the plane alone. Living Spartanly, Wilbur meticulously rebuilt the Flyer. Finally, on August 8, 1908, he announced he was ready to fly. Spectators had gathered at the racetrack since early morning. At 6:30 p.m. on August 8, 1908, as the setting sun cast long shadows across the Le Mans racetrack, Wilbur Wright turned his cap backward and quietly announced to the assembled group, "Gentlemen, I'm going to fly." Even then, his methodical nature showed through. After settling into his seat, he asked a mechanic about a specific adjustment, then got up to verify it himself before finally preparing for takeoff. The flight that followed transformed aviation history. For nearly 2 minutes, Wilbur guided the aircraft through the air, covering more than 2 miles with a grace and control that left observers stunned. The French crowd erupted in jubilant chaos, with men shouting, "This is the man who conquered the air." One French pilot, who had waited since early morning, declared he would have waited 10 times longer to have seen what I have seen today. Another admitted, "We are children compared to the Wrights." What impressed observers most wasn't the flight's duration or distance, but the unprecedented control Wilbur demonstrated. While other aviators appeared to barely survive their brief moments airborne, Wilbur's flight showed complete mastery over his machine. The French newspaper Les Matins captured this revelation. The mystery, which seemed inextricable and inexplicable, is now cleared away. It is the most extraordinary vision of a flying machine that we have seen. Wilbur became an overnight sensation in France, though his response to celebrity proved as remarkable as his flying. He maintained his modest demeanor, occasionally acknowledging crowds from his hotel balcony, but otherwise continuing his work unchanged. The French were charmed by this plain-spoken, humble American who simply went about his business. His genuine appreciation for French culture endeared him further. Between demonstrations, he would wander the Louvre and explore the Tuileries, his extensive reading having prepared him to appreciate France's artistic and historical treasures. A deep, mutual admiration developed between Wilbur and the French people. When awarded a gold medal from the French Aero Club, he delivered a moving speech that captured this connection. "If I had been born in your beautiful country and had grown up among you, I could not have expected a warmer welcome than has just been given me. When we did not know each other, we had no confidence in each other. Today, when we are acquainted, it is otherwise. We believe each other. We are friends." In the same speech, Wilbur reflected poetically on humanity's ancient dream of flight. "I sometimes think that the desire to fly after the fashion of birds is an ideal handed down to us by our ancestors, who, in their grueling travels across trackless lands in prehistoric times, looked enviously on the birds soaring freely through space at full speed, above all obstacles on the infinite highway of the air." While Wilbur captivated France, Orville prepared for demonstrations in Washington, D.C., finally drawing the serious attention of the U.S. War Department. Though reactions were more subdued given Wilbur's prior success, thousands still gathered to witness Orville's flights. He pushed the aircraft's limits, setting multiple records for time aloft, with his longest flight lasting 1 hour and 6 minutes, a far cry from their first 12-second triumph. However, Orville's pushing of boundaries came at a terrible cost. On September 17th, 1908, after 9 years of accident-free flying, disaster struck. With Lieutenant Thomas Selfridge as his passenger, Orville's aircraft suddenly plunged from 100 feet in the air. The crash killed Selfridge and left Orville severely injured with a broken leg, hip, and 4 broken ribs. His sister Catherine proved invaluable during his recovery, staying by his bedside day and night, nursing him back to health with the same devotion she had shown throughout their lives. Once Orville recovered sufficiently, he and Catherine joined Wilbur in France, where the demonstrations continued to expand into Italy and Germany. Life in France revealed the deep bond between the siblings. Catherine, the only one of the 3 who learned French, became their cultural ambassador and spokesperson, charming the French public with her social grace. A stray dog adopted Wilbur during this period, which he appropriately named Flyer. Local boys would follow him around Le Mans on his bicycle, calling out, "Monsieur Wright! Monsieur Wright," the only ones who could properly pronounce his name, as most French people called him Monsieur Wright. When the Wright family finally returned to America, Dayton welcomed them with unprecedented fanfare. The largest parade in the city's history greeted them, with more than 10,000 people gathering at the train station alone. The celebration included speeches, marching bands, concerts, and the presentation of the keys to the city. Yet true to form, the brothers occasionally slipped away from the festivities to check on work at their bicycle shop. Their success led to the formation of the Wright Company, which manufactured airplanes but spent considerable time defending their patents. Their patent battles, while controversial, reflected their deeper understanding of innovation's responsibilities. They sought not just to protect their specific mechanisms, but to ensure that aviation developed safely and systematically. Their concern that uncontrolled experimentation could lead to fatal accidents proved justified, as many early aviation pioneers died testing poorly designed aircraft. The role of their family dynamics in their success cannot be overstated. Their sister Catherine's influence extended beyond her role as family caretaker. A graduate of Oberlin College, she brought academic rigor and organizational skills to their enterprise. Her teaching experience proved valuable in helping them present their technical achievements to non-technical audiences. Charlie Taylor's contribution to aviation history deserves particular emphasis. His creation of the first aircraft engine, accomplished in just 6 weeks using basic bicycle shop tools, solved a problem that established manufacturers had declared impossible. Using a lathe and drill press intended for bicycle repair, he created an engine that exceeded their specifications, delivering 20 horsepower at just 150 pounds when they had requested only 8 horsepower at 200 pounds. His mechanical genius complemented the brothers' theoretical understanding, helping translate their designs into reliable machinery. The Wright Company's evolution reflected broader changes in American industry. Their initial sales to the French and American governments had already made them wealthy, though never extravagantly so. While the business proved profitable, the brothers had never pursued flight for financial gain. Their patent disputes, often portrayed negatively, stemmed from a desire to protect their intellectual property rather than monopolize the industry. They had invested years of careful research and development, funded entirely from their modest bicycle business earnings, and sought to ensure their innovation was properly recognized and compensated. The close-knit Wright family faced its first major fracture in 1926 when Catherine, at age 52, decided to marry. Orville, who had grown increasingly dependent on her as his social manager and constant companion, took the news as a betrayal. He refused to attend the wedding and stopped speaking to her entirely, viewing her marriage as a violation of an unspoken pact among the siblings to remain unmarried, as Wilbur had done, and as Orville himself would do. Only through the intervention of their older brother Reuchlin did Orville reconcile with Catherine on her deathbed in 1929. Wilbur had died much earlier, succumbing to typhoid fever at just 45 years old on May 30th, 1912. Orville continued until 1948, when he passed away from a heart attack. Before his death, he sold the Wright Company in 1918, which eventually became part of the Curtiss Wright Company, still existing today with a market capitalization of $7.5 billion. Their legacy extended far beyond business success. Just 66 years after their first flight, Neil Armstrong, another son of Ohio, carried a piece of the original Wright Flyer to the moon. This symbolic gesture acknowledged that the Apollo program's triumph built directly upon the Wright brothers' achievement. In a single lifetime, humanity had progressed from its first powered flight to walking on the moon, perhaps the most dramatic technological leap in human history. The success of the Wright brothers stemmed from their unique combination of qualities: Orville's enthusiasm and obsession, paired with Wilbur's genius and methodical nature, their commitment to solving problems piece by piece, their frugality that forced creative solutions, and above all, their unwavering dedication to their goal. Their approach to innovation proved particularly significant. Rather than pursuing dramatic breakthroughs, they achieved success through patient, incremental improvements. Each modification to their aircraft designs underwent careful testing and documentation. The transformation of their bicycle shop skills into aviation expertise demonstrated the vital connection between practical experience and theoretical understanding. They understood materials and structural principles through direct experience, knowledge that proved invaluable in aircraft construction. This combination of practical skill and systematic thinking became a model for future technological innovation. The Wright brothers' influence extended beyond specific aviation achievements to establish a new model for solving complex technological challenges. Their systematic observation, careful experimentation, and methodical documentation demonstrated how seemingly impossible problems could be solved through disciplined effort. Unlike earlier inventors who relied primarily on trial and error, they combined practical experimentation with careful data collection and analysis. Their story reveals essential truths about innovation and achievement. Great breakthroughs often come not from dramatic inspiration, but from patient, systematic effort guided by genuine understanding. Their success required not just technical skill, but patience, persistence, and unwavering dedication to their goal. Even when faced with setbacks and skepticism, they maintained their systematic approach, confident that careful observation and experimentation would eventually yield results. As John T. Daniels observed, it wasn't luck that made them fly. It was hard work and common sense. They put their whole heart and soul and all their energy into an idea, and they had the faith. From that first innocent gift of a toy helicopter to the conquest of the air, the Wright brothers transformed humanity's ancient dream of flight into reality. Their achievement demonstrated that with sufficient determination, careful study, and systematic effort, even the most impossible seeming goals lay within reach. Mankind had become an airborne species, and the infinite highway of the air that Wilbur had spoken of in France now stretched before us, all the way to the stars.